Welcome to this explainer. Imagine waking up in the pitch black. It's 4:47 in the morning. Your phone is sitting face down on a glass desk in a dimly lit penthouse office, and it is just vibrating relentlessly. You flip it over. You have exactly 47 missed calls. The city skyline is glowing below you, but inside, the atmosphere is absolutely freezing. You manage $2.3 billion of other people's money, and right now you are smack in the middle of a catastrophic financial nightmare.
$340 million gone. I mean, let's just sit with the sheer nauseating scale of that loss for a second. That money didn't vanish over a bad year or even a bad month. It evaporated in just 6 hours. And this isn't your money. We're talking about retirement funds, university endowments. A big chunk of this money belongs to a children's hospital in Houston. You've been awake since 1 a.m. watching literally every market in Asia bleed red, just staring at a glass of water that went completely cold hours ago.
Sitting there on the 47th floor of One World Trade, there's really only one question echoing in your mind. How did I let this happen? But the central mystery here, and honestly the most fascinating part of this whole narrative, is that you didn't just let it happen. You actually saw this coming 3 full weeks ago. You had the chance to stop it, but a massive, inescapable trap stopped you from doing a single thing about it. Section 1. The ignored warning. Let's rewind 3 weeks earlier. Okay, so it's 7 a.m. Your head analyst, Marcus Chen, slides a red-flagged report across your desk and says 4 incredibly chilling words. We have a problem. The data in this report laid out a terrifying reality. We're talking spiking inflation, tightening signals from the Fed, and massive banks holding toxic mortgage-backed securities that were essentially valued at less than 40 cents on the dollar. It was bad. Marcus's recommendation was loud and clear. Rotate into defensive treasuries immediately. You are totally convinced. You're ready to pull the trigger. And then, the phone rings.
The caller is Robert Calloway. He's a Texas oil billionaire, 7th-generation money, and the guy just doesn't lose bets. He's calling from his ranch, and he delivers this exact quote. "Son, I didn't give you $800 million to be cautious. I gave it to you to make me money. Don't touch my position." And boom, there's the ultimate trap. Callaway's $800 million makes up 38% of your entire fund. If you defensively move his position and he pulls his money out in anger, the fund collapses anyway. So, paralyzed by this chilling ultimatum, you call Marcus back, and you tell him to hold. Section 2. The collapse. Snap forward to September 15, 2008. Lehman Brothers has just filed for bankruptcy, holding a staggering $613 billion in debt. The brutal velocity of what happens next is just mind-blowing. At 9:31 a.m., the markets open and chaos immediately ensues. Just 14 minutes later, by 9:45 a.m., your fund is already down 8%. By 10 a.m., down 12%. $276 million completely vanished into thin air. And this situation perfectly captures the real, visceral human cost of a crash. It's not just red numbers on a screen, it's compounding disasters happening right inside the office. Your risk manager, David Park, is standing in your doorway, pale as a ghost, pushing you about margin calls. Your assistant is at her desk crying because her own personal savings are locked in the fund, which is a detail you didn't even know until this exact moment. And your phone? It's lighting up like a Christmas tree with every single investor calling simultaneously. All while you stare at a screen that now reads minus $340 million. You have 10 minutes to get answers. At 10:17 a.m., you're forced onto what has to be the most tense emergency video call imaginable. You've got 6 major investors staring back at you with over $350 million in exposure. Thomas Reed from the Ohio Teachers Pension Fund is visibly sweating, demanding to know what is happening to their retirement money. And Robert Calloway, he isn't even on the screen. He sent his lawyer to just sit there ominously in his place. You have absolutely 0 good answers. So you tell them the truth. You saw it coming, you had the trades ready, but you didn't execute. Now, that truth brings an immediate, devastating consequence. The reps from Abu Dhabi initiate a redemption review. If you're not familiar, this is a formal process where an investor prepares to pull their capital out. And in the middle of a blind panic, if one major investor pulls out, everyone else stampedes for the exit too. A total fund collapse is basically guaranteed. You are now completely backed into a corner. You have to produce an absolute, insane miracle to save this thing. Section 3. The contrarian bet. This is where things take a massive turn. Right in the eye of the storm, you realize a fundamental truth about finance. Markets don't just disappear, they overcorrect. Think about the blind, irrational panic selling of the broader market versus the cold, hard logic of buying based on fundamentals. While everyone else is dumping assets out of pure terror, you see fundamentally strong American companies getting beaten down strictly by panic, not by any actual flaw in their underlying value.
Take Wells Fargo, for example. $25. That is the exact price Wells Fargo was trading at that morning. A massive bank with $1.3 trillion in assets, which had been trading at $37 just months prior, was suddenly available for a measly $25 a share. It was a price that made absolutely no rational sense. It was pure absurdity driven by fear.
So you make a bold, honestly terrifying move. Step 1, you tell your traders to deploy $400 million. Step 2, you buy literally everything the panic is selling. We're talking beaten down positions in massive institutions like Goldman Sachs, Chevron, and Microsoft. And step 3, you completely ignore the screaming panic around you. Your head trader thinks you've completely lost your mind. Your risk manager, David Park, he's so terrified by this massive gamble that he literally drops his key card on your desk and quits on the spot. Section 4, the aftermath. Let's fast forward 18 months.
Did the gamble actually work? Jumping ahead to March 2010, the fund didn't just survive, it totally thrived. It was up 31% from its crash low. All those positions you bought at the absolute bottom, they recovered and then some. This contrarian bet ultimately resulted in a staggering $680 million in profit for your investors since that incredibly dark day in September.
And the payoff extended way beyond the portfolio. The very investors who almost destroyed the fund are now your biggest supporters. Thomas Reed from the Ohio Teachers Pension actually sends you a handwritten letter thanking you for protecting their retirements. Abu Dhabi doesn't just stay. They double their position to $600 million. The Chicago family office sends over a rare bottle of 1978 Bordeaux. And Robert Calloway, he calls you personally to refer 3 of his billionaire friends.
Section 5, the psychological toll. Because we really need to talk about the true cost. It all sounds like the perfect victory, right? But what those massive profit margins and fancy bottles of wine completely fail to show is what a crisis like this actually costs a human being. The absolutely crucial point is this. You never really sleep the same way again. Because you learn firsthand that the difference between a great investor and a broken one isn't superior intelligence. It's simply the ability to sit with uncertainty when every biological instinct in your body is screaming at you to run. You really have to contrast the natural human response of fear with the iron discipline of facts. Most people ran in 2008. They let fear win, and they locked in massive, unrecoverable losses. What you should really take away from this, whether we're talking about high-stakes finance or just life in general, is that surviving a crisis requires trusting the math over the madness. You held your ground during a historic reset. But here's the haunting reality that stays with you forever. Even though the money came back, and even though the fund survived, the scenario where you were wrong, that lives in you. Permanently. Every night, you still run the what-if scenarios. What if the market didn't recover? What if the bet failed? What if that Houston hospital actually had to close a wing because of your choices? That kind of trauma doesn't just vanish just because the portfolio turned green again. Which leaves us with one final, pretty chilling thought. The money survived. The investors survived. But did the version of you that existed before 4:47 a.m. on that morning ever really survive? Extreme pressure inflicts a permanent psychological change, one that literally no profit margin can ever erase. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. If you found this deep dive into the psychology and strategy of a crisis fascinating, I highly invite you to explore more of our explainers. We'll see you next time.